Welcome back to the Monte and Wolf Show. We are almost through the first round robin. Uh, Rumors of Gen.G's death were greatly exaggerated, it turns out. Right, Wolf?
Yes.
How's it going on the old Gen.G check-in? Turns out they're 16-0 in terms of games, 8-0 in best of threes. They have yet to lose. They might complete the game lossless first round robin. The only thing that stands in their way at this point in time is Nongshim Red Force. So gonna go ahead and guess that they are going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much confirmed it's going to be the perfect round robin. I was able to hear from some people close to Gen.G. I won't reveal any sources that at EWC the players kind of rebelled against the coaching staff, and they were the ones asking for the draft that was played. And they told Coach Kim like, no, just trust us, bro. And Coach Kim was like, I don't think this is a good idea, and it wasn't a good idea, and they lost at EWC. But maybe that
Have the
loss.
players learned their lesson, Wolf?
It looks like maybe the loss allowed Coach Kim to be like, all right, cool, you had your fun. We're going back to what's actually reality. And then they smashed Guangdong Freaks and Dplus in what was a relatively difficult week for them in week 4. And I mean, watching them play against Guangdong Freaks, especially where um, there wasn't a whole lot of gameplay happening for Guangdong, especially in the top lane, where Dudu. I talked to the Korean casters about this. Like I talked to Sunke, and I can't remember who was on with him that day, but I talked to them after the show, and I was like, "Do you guys remember when Dudu was like, I think I need to back, but actually I can't back, but I can't farm, and I can't actually get back to lane properly, and he's like, am I gonna get dove? I guess I'm gonna get dove. Like he was not allowed to play the game. They didn't allow him to play the game, and he didn't play the game, and Gen.G won. It was a
Well,
very
Wolf,
inside
we are
service.
back in the rash of the Renekton blind pick epidemic, which I don't always in every meta hate Renekton blind pick, but let me tell you, Wolf, I loathe Renekton blind pick right now because what it does is it just sets you up for failure. You have to win lanes so hard to become a split push threat because otherwise you can't do anything in this meta because every single AD carry that you're playing against has some sort of self-peel mechanism. If you're trying to flank and get an Ezreal or a Corki, you're just going to have a terrible time. Even a Zeri, right, going over walls, or a Kaisa can ult to reposition. So I don't really, and then every jungler and support will just CC you, or you will, in the case of Guangdong Freaks, be trying to play a game against the zoning created by GP barrels. And it's like, even if you get leads in these scenarios, you cannot convert them into good flanks and team fights. And unless you build Stride Breaker, which some players do, right? And I do think it can be a good option. But most of the time, you're building Black Cleaver Sterix or Eclipse Sterix, and then you can't do anything. You actually provide zero value in terms of late game or mid game team fighting. And so I am really bummed that we're seeing this pick. And Keen absolutely slapped Dudu with a Jace in the top side that was just completely unpunished by Guangdong. And by the way, Bulldog completely exposed as a Trist Corki merchant, which is what I was saying the whole time, that I needed to see Guangdong do something that wasn't Trist Corki, right? And then I would actually take them seriously. Now, of course, what happened? Did DRX give them Trist Corki? Oh, shit. They gave them Trist Corki, even in a very winnable game number 2 later in the week. But it's like Bulldog is resorting to this mid lane Zeri, which I don't think is good.
It's not good.
Um,
It's literally not good. It's never been.
it's
I mean,
it's the
well,
latest thing you play into Corki, apparently.
I was gonna say it's never been good, but that's not true because when Zeri released, mid Zeri seemed kind of viable when she had all the better stats that she had before she was subsequently nerfed multiple times because she was super overtuned. She's still arguably somewhat overtuned, but back then it was actually playable in mid, and it was played a lot in mid. So much so that before pro play, people are like, "Is Zeri gonna be a mid champion as well as an AD carry?" kind of like Lucian was in the past and stuff like that. But when we saw this draft, if you watch back the cast, we thought it was going to be Ezreal mid because that's actually much more
Yep.
common right now, and Ezreal stats allows you to win lane. It's tricky, and I didn't think there was any chance Bulldog was going to win lane into Shovi's Corki on Ezreal. It was never going to happen, but I thought that one was, relatively playable. Bulldog did a better job than I expected in terms of what happened with the Zeri mid. Like he was 2-1-2 at the end of the game. Like it wasn't like he got absolutely blasted or anything like that, but it's just tough to pull this off. And I know Stevie Max wouldn't draft this if they hadn't been scrimming it, but you know, it didn't work. Topside was a disaster, and they did not have. I mean, against Corki, you just don't have lane pressure with this matchup, and there wasn't much else they could have played. They played the way in game one, into Chovy's Corki. Just Chovy, it's his most played champion. He's played it like 10 times, and I looked at the stat earlier this week. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was like he had 10 games of Corki and then 2 games of the next most played champion. And again, we're just like, just let him have it. Just let him have it again. He could just play Corki. And then he wins lane against Tristana. He's like the only Corki is winning that matchup. He's winning every other matchup, by the way. Smashing everybody. It's not even close. And I don't know. This is one of those series that reminds you that GenG is just the best team in the LCK. And against LCK teams who aren't, I mean, like, I want to say aren't creative, but it was somewhat creative, but in a bad way from Kwangdong Freaks. It's just going to be so easy. It just feels so free. They even then smashed Dplus later in the week, which people were like, oh, it's going to be the Dplus series where they always play Gen.G close, which is a relatively true statement, right? I mean, Gen.G has been stopped by Dplus, even when Dplus was weak in the past. It ended up being cool drafts and exciting series that happened against Gen.G, especially in playoffs over the last few years that ended up being super hype. Nope, not this time. Just another 2-0 stop, not even close. And I mean, Gen.G seems unstoppable right now domestically. And when you consider that T1 also is a little bit rocky right now, maybe Hanwha is the team that has the best chance of stopping their streak, but it's quite wild to see the dominance. But it's quite fun too, because I mean they're just so damn good. The bottom lane is on point. I don't want to see Pays play any more Senna. That's not my favorite thing to watch. That gave Dplus a chance to maybe do something. On the other side of the coin, Dplus, like earlier in the week and last week, weren't playing through, and I say last week, but of course 2 weeks ago before EWC, they played not completely through aiming. They were like, oh, we can play through Kingen. Kingen's really good. Kingen can pop off. Kingen get a Quadra on Renekton. We don't have to just give aiming all the money, then hope he can carry. This time they're like, no, back to giving aiming all the money. He'll probably carry. He did not carry. He had all the money, and then he just sat on the other side of a wall as Zeri, and then slid in after the team fight was over, and didn't do it.
I
Maybe
mean, it's
maybe
worth
back
noting
to
that aiming is the highest economy carry in the league. He takes 33.6% of his team's CS after 15 minutes. And part of this, you have to contextualize it based on the champions that they play, because Pays is the lowest, but Pays also does things like play Senna, right? Which is, you know, it will affect your CS percentage, everything like that. But it is pretty impressive that aiming is able to do that. Now, he also, outside of Viper, has the highest overall damage share in the league and the second to Viper in damage percent after 15 minutes. And both of these AD carries are very high economy AD carries. But I think the difference is that Viper looks, just from the eye test, significantly better than aiming. He's participating in team fights. His mechanics look on point. He doesn't have the same stupid whoopsie moments that aiming does from time to time. Like aiming, you rarely see Viper just be in a side lane, die, and lose the game. But aiming does that, or turret dive and die and lose the game. And so when aiming's good, and I think that the logic is, aiming can be a giant carry in a Zeri meta, you give him that champion. But at the same time, he makes a lot more mistakes than Viper does. And so he's more of a coin flip when giving it that amount of resources to. And we see that. I mean, we see that. That was a winnable game number 2 from Dplus. I don't even know what they were doing in the first draft of game number 1, because I don't know how you can look at Esports World Cup, Wolf, and be like, it is acceptable to give the opposing team Tristana and Ziggs in the same draft. Like, you know what happened when Cream got Tristana in the fast pushing. You know what happened when APA got Ziggs in the fast pushing the camp. To give them both, you give huge priority to the enemy team, especially when you're taking Zeri Alistair in bot lane and you're just getting pushed early. And if you leave Ziggs or Trist alone for any amount of time, plus you're dealing with Gangplank global ults, Ziggs global ults, so they can affect lanes that they're not even in and, really push advantages very deep into the enemy jungle. I mean, it was crazy that Gen.G got this draft.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention the Ivern brushes that make it impossible to engage onto the Ziggs or punish him in any way. Allow him to free fire. It's. I mean, Gen.G's draft. It seems like Gen.G really took to heart that their drafting was very weak at EWC, and then they came in. They had some really good reads. They had some really good drafts. They played the meta that was shown at EWC, but like almost to an extremely potent degree, and the rest of the LCK just wasn't ready. And I say the rest of the LCK, I mean, it was Dplus and Kwangdong they faced. It was a tough week for Gen.G. They 4-0'd it. Some other teams of the LCK had some better draft reads overall this week, but I feel like I find myself, the more LCK that goes by this season, disappointed in a lot of the drafting that we've been seeing. DRX's drafting was abhorrent. I don't know what is happening to where some of these teams just draft and prio the absolutely wrong picks. Like Gnar first pick just started cropping up after at the beginning of the week. This was proven to be fraudulent. This was proven to be extremely exposed. And does this mean that LCK teams are all just screaming each other and they all have like the same bad read? Maybe, but or are these top laners like, oh, I want this pick because it seems like it's pretty free in our scrims? It's not free. There's so many picks that can punish you. The GP that popped up this week especially is the biggest example of this. And you just have teams giving over Tristana, giving over Corki to Chovy, and I just don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that if you don't give Corki to Chovy that there's not a pick he can find, because there definitely is. So it's a tough call to make in that case. But I watched Bro versus Nongshim. I watched that series, and I know that's not what we're really going to talk about on this show. But
you can go ahead, knock yourself out. How was your Bro versus Nongshim experience? Brion still totally defeated 0-8. They're going for the reverse perfect round robin.
Well, there's for every Gen.G there's a Bro, I guess. There's just no end to Bro not drafting correctly, not capitalizing on their leads, not. I mean, it's Brover. Like it's done. Team who seemingly, I mean, we predicted that they were going to sub Envy out, and put Karis in because they just do this every time now. It's like, oh, in game 1 we play this roster, in game 2 we play this roster. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just very obviously Samver is way better than Envy. Why do they keep playing Envy in game 1? Nobody can explain that. Nobody can explain that. Who can explain it? Tell me. Come on. Like, everybody's like, oh, it's Envy again. And then Envy literally misses every single Mystic shot in the team fight on Baron. Like, misses, like, everything. And I get it. Like, I was one of the big Envy defenders back in the day because he had a good Lucian. His Zarya was pretty decent. Okay. And now, because he's nervous, I guess, because his team is winless and he's messed up a lot, he's choking, but he's choking every single game. They put Samver in and he's like 7 times better at the moment, but he still can't get it done. But I mean, at least he's better. So like, just pick this roster. Pool Bay is not better than Karis, actually. Karis is owning him completely now. So just play Karis. Are you just putting Pool Bay in because like he needs more experience and Karis' ceiling is already set? But maybe if we just like let Pool Bay get owned enough times, maybe he'll be better than Karis overall eventually. I don't know what's going on. Now they're like signing Fate. Fate? The guy who also peaked like 3 years ago? Like, what is going on, bro?
They're trying to sell their spot, Wolf.
I mean, probably, right? But if they're doing that, then why are they signing Fate? What's happening? There's only like half a round robin left. You guys ain't going to playoffs. There's like 4 weeks left. You sign a new player. It's very late. It's a little bit late, bro.
Don't worry. The bro undefeated round robin is coming up next. Right? They'll take down Gen.G surely, with the help of fate.
I mean, it would be pretty exciting if they got the negative 30, 36 run or something like that. I mean, obviously that's not possible because they've won some games, but the 0-18 is still in our sights. It is achievable. Maybe
Especially
bro
because
can
I mean
make
the
history.
0-9 is almost guaranteed because of
It's
Dplus being
guaranteed,
their
yeah.
last match.
No, it's not. It's happening. They have beaten Dplus. You know, we called them Kingslayers in 2021. I remember when Bro was interesting in 2021, 2022 with Umpty, where you'd be like, oh, they can punch up. Like, this team is definitely a bottom 3 team, but every now and then you're like, oh, are they going to make playoffs? They did make playoffs. They beat Dplus to make playoffs. It was exciting back then. I remember we talked about Bro on this show where we were like, oh, man, Umpty's early game. You know, they're getting stuff
Yeah.
done. It's hype.
I mean,
Now
to
I'm
be
just
fair to
like,
Umti, people will criticize Umti because of what happened at Esports World Cup, but he has been much better than Pioshik on that roster as a whole. And that roster, that Team Liquid roster, is much better than the roster with Pioshik in it overall. And part of that probably is Umti's voice in the team.
absolutely, no doubt. I mean, he made a big mistake at Esports World Cup, but if he hadn't, part of the reason why T1 almost lost was because he played super well. So, you know, you take the good and the bad with Umpty, but at the end of the day, bro is it's doomed. I don't know what to say. Even Morgan is not performing anymore. I don't know. Like he was the guy who on Hanwha Life was able to help carry them to Worlds, and you know, a lot of people were like, he's the worst top laner at Worlds back then and stuff like that, which was relatively accurate, but not actually accurate. He was not. He was the worst Korean top laner at Worlds. He was the guy who actually got a lot of stuff done on Renekton, but I mean, I don't like to talk about Bro on this show because it just ends up being me getting angry and yelling and stuff like I just did. But
I like it.
I'm pretty fed up, and you know, Edgar, we do these weekly check-ins with the coaches, and sometimes we talk to the players. We're like, oh, let's talk about your last series. How did it go? How are you feeling? You know, sometimes it's like we'll be like, Morgan, how are you feeling about your last series? What needed to improve? And usually the players for Bro in these where we get these documents sent in are like, oh, there's still a lot to work on, you know, or like, oh man, we really messed it up. And then Edgar is always
Edgar
like,
is a world's winning coach as well. He
yeah,
was the
well,
coach for Samsung.
exactly. Well, Edgar posts up in these interviews kind of like, well, we gave him a good draft, but the players just couldn't execute on it. Or he basically always says, well, I had this idea, but the players couldn't do it. So, you know, and he basically always says, like, I had this sick plan, but the players are bad. So, you know, it is what it is. And so, as overall as a team, as an LCK caster team, we always read these and we're like, man, Edgar's throwing his players on the bus. Like, this is, I don't know if this is great behavior as a coach, whatever. And the more I watch these players play, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I mean, they can't do it. They can't do it, Monty. Like, he's like, I have this, and they're like, oh, it's an interesting draft, and they can't do it. They can't do it. Oh, we're massively ahead. Nope, can't do it. Can't do it. Can't be done. I get it now. I get it. Like, and then also he's throwing out Pool Bay and then pulling them out every game. How? I mean, we learned from Danny long ago that you can't just like do a okay, you play game 1, you play game 2, no matter what sort of situation. That's not actually how you develop.
No, it ruins comms and potential synergy. Unfortunately, like it's very difficult, I think, to just pull players in and out in a best of 3.
It's yeah.
But Wolf, they gave T1 a run for their money after
Yeah,
T1
I
showed
guess
up.
so. I guess so. Yeah, that did happen. Like T1, but they did beat like Keria, who was like he was like so tired he only has one eye open while he's playing.
Well, also, I do think we have to criticize T1 a little bit. Like, sure, they win EWC, but why were they so tired? This match took place on Wednesday, and the finals took place on Sunday night.
So, T1, I think so. Keria, when I arrived to this is like a look behind the curtain, but when I arrived to LCK, obviously I arrived the day before we recorded Monte Wolf. I haven't, I'm very tired. It's been a long week. I had a lot of bro games and
Sure.
all this other stuff. But I arrived, went to cast the next day. When I was going to the studio, I saw Keria show up separately from T1, and he had a suitcase with him. So looks like he didn't take the same plane as them. Came a little bit later. I don't know what happened with that. Like I don't have any facts, just the anecdote that I saw Keria show up with a suitcase. It looked like he had come directly from the airport, and I suspect that business class was full or something like that, so he took a later flight so that he didn't have to fly economy back to Korea, and maybe he took the L, like took the hit for his team. He's like, all right, fine, I'll, you guys can all fly business. I'll fly on a later flight, something like that. I don't know why that would happen necessarily because there's a lot of other people who could have done that. There's management who are definitely all flying business class. Coma's flying business class. Um, I don't know why Keria
Well,
would be the
also,
one to
like, were
choose.
they delayed because they were doing some shoots or something for EWC? Because it was like, I mean, this was 3 days after they won the final. Like, why does it's not that long of a flight?
Yeah, it's like a so to fly from Riyadh to either Abu Dhabi or Dubai, which is usually where you transfer when you fly to Korea. That's like a 2 hour flight, and then after that, it's like a 8 hour flight on return. Flying there is a little bit longer, but on return, it's like an 8 hour flight, 8.5 hour flight. So it's like 10 hours flying plus the layover, 14
Which
hours.
is less time than to get to the States a lot of
Yeah,
the time from
it's
Korea.
it's significantly easier. Um, if you want to fly to like New York or Atlanta, that's like a 15-hour thing from
Right.
Korea. If you want to fly to LA, it's like 11 hours. It can be less depending on how lucky you get with winds and stuff like that. But anyway, I was surprised to see Keria alone in the elevator with a suitcase when the rest of the team had already showed up. So I don't know what happened there. He looked very tired. Um, might have been his own choice. He might have had some stuff he wanted to do in Riyadh. That's personal. I don't know, but he definitely was very late compared to the rest of the team, seemingly from what I saw anecdotally. Uh, and he looked like he was going to pass out. He was very tired, but the rest of the team was tired. I was tired on the desk. Brendan was casting. Brendan Valdez was casting that day. He had gotten off a plane with me. Hours before. Like it wasn't even 24 hours before the show. So, it's a lot of people were tired, right? You're a pro gamer, you're tired, you just won the tournament, you played the longest out of anyone because you played until the end, you didn't have as much rest time. Like Gen.G stayed there until the end as well, but they lost on the first day, so they had a lot more rest days. They could just chill.
I'm sure
T1
they were scrimming T1 to help them prepare, though.
almost certainly. Like I can't confirm that, but almost certainly. Um, and you know, but T1 they had a tough schedule. They looked tired. They played tired. They looked much better against Hanwha. They still ended up losing to Hanwha, but obviously that first day, first matchup, it wasn't great for them. But I think there's literally no reason to read into this any further than that they were tired and jet lagged. By the way, everyone is giving, I mean, not everyone, but a lot of T1 fans are giving LCK shit for, they're biased against T1 because they made them play after they won EWC. This schedule was made a long time ago. Come on, be realistic. Like, actually use your brain. This is not like,
I mean, they could have changed the schedule, to be fair. Like, I think
yeah,
that
but I
that
mean,
is.
but like, how? How would they change the schedule?
Sure, I'll bite. You could literally change Wednesday's match to Friday and Friday's match to Sunday. Therefore, you have the same kind of, you can actually manipulate these schedules in order to make it make sense.
But then the Friday teams have to play 2 days earlier than they're scheduled, and all of the schedule is set
Well,
up.
no, you remix the schedule in an appropriate way to give this. There is a way to do it, Wolf.
But
I'm
the but
sure.
the sch- but the
It's a
schedule is
jigsaw puzzle, but you can do it.
sure, the schedule is made the way it is though to make sure that every team has the same distance between their matches no
I
matter what.
understand. I
So I mean,
understand.
T1 could have just not accepted EWC if that's an issue for them. They knew they were playing against Bro after they came back. It's completely fine. I really blaming the LCK for this is actually hilarious to me. You came back, you have to play your match on the first day. That's the luck of the draw. That's how it is round robin format.
I will say, like, obviously, this wasn't a mandatory event. The real problem here, guys, is when we talk about contracts with the players, like, almost certainly, I haven't seen T1's contract, so I can't verify this, but basically, almost certainly there are clauses in T1's contracts that require them to play MSI and Worlds, right? It's like, here are the tournaments that and the league that you are contracted for and required to play in. It would be insane if it didn't have that clause, but I'm just saying I haven't seen the contract. It is in Korean, so I can't fucking tell you. But I can say it's standard practice to have clauses in there that say, we are contracting you for X amount of money to play in every single match of these events, right? LCK, MSI, Worlds, maybe some show matches at the discretion of the team. But this was an optional event. Now, the thing is that both Gen.G and T1, the organizations, have decided to become partner teams with Saudi Arabia in the Esports World Cup. And so what this means is, technically this event was optional, right? As in Riot was not going to force them to go there. And also that's the other thing is Riot can't have teams like turn down MSI and Worlds if they qualify. So like almost certainly in the team participation agreements, there are also clauses that say, should you qualify for Worlds, you must attend all your matches at Worlds. And I can tell you that this is in there because I am personally responsible for getting these clauses within Riot's contracts because I ditched LCS to send CLG to Korea for a boot camp before playoffs one year, and we put in subs. And Riot, there was a loophole in the contract at that time. I doubt that loophole exists anymore, which is like you must field your starting roster that qualified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but this is all to say that Riot doesn't obligate you to participate in Esports World Cup. Maybe the team contracts have clauses that say at the discretion of the team, the players must participate, which might make sense because T1 obviously went to the Red Bull tournament this last offseason and participated in that as well. But because T1 and Gen.G have decided to sign partnership agreements with the Saudi government, they are among the 30 partner teams. Even though this was optional, according to Riot, to attend, it was not optional, most likely, for T1 and Gen.G to attend.
So we're adding these third-party tournaments in, it seems like slowly over time. The Saudi government announced with the IOC, we have the Olympics, the Esports Olympics coming up. There's rumors Kespa Cup is coming back. There's the first new LAN of next year, which we don't know the full details of yet, but like that could be likely a third-party tournament that Riot sanctions. We don't know yet, confirmed, right? But at the end of the day, you want to go to a third-party tournament, then you come back, and the fans can't be like, but Riot should fix up. It's a third party. Like, this is not a Riot tournament. It's not Riot sanctioned. Like, LCK has no responsibility or obligation.
Really, you should be pissed at the teams. I mean, you should be pissed at T1 and Gen.G because they are the ones who are choosing to go.
Yeah. Like, I chose to go, and I didn't come back and go, well, like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have to cast or work on Wednesday when I come back. I mean, when you come back, you've got to go back to work. You got to go back to the domestic league you're on. Riot already gave a whole break for EWC. Anyway, I just don't think it's realistic or even goldfish brain level discussion to claim that this was Riot's doing and they were against T1. They wanted them to lose to Bro. Like, come on.
Also, they didn't
Use
lose.
your heads, T1 fans.
Like,
come on. Seriously. Like, I don't want to see any more takes like this on the internet, please.
All right. I do want to talk about the T1 Hanwha series because it was very interesting. But first, we have a new sponsor for the Monte and Wolf Show. That's right. It's ExpressVPN. And if you've lived abroad, especially in Korea, you know that VPNs are basically mandatory to have. But I'll give you an example of how you could use ExpressVPN. So on our culture channel, Last Free Nation Culture, where you guys know we do film and movie shows, if you guys have been following along with those, you may want a VPN to access some of this content. For example, I'll give you a very concrete example. This coming week on Foreplay, the show that I do with Thorin and Richard Lewis, we are doing the 13th Warrior. Now, the 13th Warrior is not available on any US streaming services. However, you know where you can find it? If you use your VPN to go to Korea, you could find the 13th Warrior on Disney Plus. It's also available, I think, 13th Warrior in like 60 other countries on Disney Plus, but not available in the United States. So if you're already paying for Disney Plus, this is how you get access to that content. Now, for me, I use it to go to the US for House of the Dragon, which I also did with Doa on the show Nerd Legion. So it's very useful so that you can actually access get the full value of everything that you're paying for, in addition to keeping you secure. And as Wolf will tell you, there's public Wi-Fi everywhere in Korea. Don't let your data get stolen, idiot. Like, use a VPN on your phone.
Yeah. Don't be beholden to your regional streaming services. Don't allow people to steal your stuff. Be safe on the internet. Travel places, access your streaming content that you want to have, that you actually pay for. Don't get blocked by, oh, I'm in a different location and now I'm wrecked. No,
Yep.
don't let that happen.
I would just say, if I was going to Saudi Arabia, which I didn't, I might think about using a VPN there. Or if I were going to China, I might think about using VPNs in these locations. Maybe some of these countries are not where you want people snooping into your data. Don't say anything, Wolf. Anyway, you can get your money's worth at expressvpn.com/Monte Wolf. Don't forget to use our link at expressvpn.com/Monte Wolf to get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Honestly, guys, like, if you don't have a VPN service and you are anywhere digitally savvy and using all of your streaming services and, frankly, just for security reasons in the year of our Lord 2024, I have some questions for you. I really do. So be smart.
Be safe.
And also just get value out of what you're already paying for in terms of services.
Get more value out of what you're paying for.
Exactly. And I've literally told you, if you guys are watching some of our content, that we use streaming services, and this is a great way to follow along without having to purchase these films or do other things. So thank you very much to ExpressVPN. Let's talk about some Hanwha versus T1. So Hanwha Life. This was probably the best series of the week, even though it did include arguably, and I'm not gonna say arguably, it did include many a throw. T1 probably should have won this series 2-0.
The last team fight was a disaster for T1. And
Faker cannot play Tristana, by the way. That is now illegal.
He did not do it. It was really rough. In that last game, I mean, frankly, the decision making was pretty abhorrent. It was super bizarre because Faker's the type of player who often breaks the rules, and by that I mean he'll overextend so that his team can swoop in and surprise the enemy team because they had the faster rotation. On picks like Azir, and Tristana to a certain extent because you have the buffer and you have a pretty strong escape, and we saw Bulldog yesterday pull this type of heist off, where you can do something that seems illegal, get away with it, and then your team punishes the enemy team because they're like, I'm going on the Tristana, and then you buffer it and you waste all their cooldowns, and then you do it. But he was kind of he was like, actually, I'm going in 1v5. I'm going in, and the team is not there, and he's like, I'm dead. That was it. That was the play. It was very bizarre to watch him do that. But for me, like, I don't want to shit on his Tristana. It was definitely not great. I want to champion Viper, who had an insane series on Ezreal.
Whoa. I do want to shit on Faker's Tristana first.
I mean, you can go off.
That final fight, before you talk about Viper and Peanut, who did have good series. So Faker, in the final fight, rocket jumped over a wall, flashed back over the wall, got flash stunned by a Bard Q, and then chain CC'd into a Yone ult and died. Like, he literally didn't do anything in a team fight, tried to use rocket jump aggressively, it cost him his flash, and he ended up dying anyway, and that's what ended up throwing a game that T1 very much could have won.
I mean, it was definitely favoring them, for sure. And at this level...
I mean, Jax was useless in this composition. Like, I didn't even like Hanwha's draft here. Like, Jax, they blinded Jax, Zeus picks Kennen. They blind Jax with both Kennen and GP up. Zeus picks Kennen, and then Doran literally can't do anything for the entirety of the game.
They got Kai'Sa into Ezreal, right? I mean, it was super obvious draft for T1. The Rakan was somewhat risky, but Keria played it well until he didn't, right? He missed his engage in that last fight. I think everyone was flustered by Faker's play in that last fight, and then Keria botched the engage, botched the knockup. It was a big mess.
Gumayushi was also farming mid lane because he thought they wouldn't engage, and like they absolutely could have gotten out of that situation, but they decided to stick around, and so it was a split call where Guma was like pushing the mid wave and wasn't with his team, while his team just kind of like one by one got picked off and died. It was pretty bad from T1.
I think that because we hold T1 to a really high standard on this show and also just in the LCK, we're being extremely critical of them. Whereas like if Bulldog made the same errors as Faker, we might be a little bit more.
Right, and
We
like
might, honestly, we might be a little bit nicer about it.
this comes from the fact that I do think they should have won game one, and they did win game two, and they could have 2-0'd this series. I mean, really, the problem, Wolf, is that Peanut got extraordinarily lucky in his smite fights in this series. Like he basically, there were times, guys, when there were 50-50 calls at Baron, where the Baron in game number one, that was the 50-50 that Hanwha ended up winning. It was, I think the Baron, I was doing this like frame by frame on my stream, Wolf, and it was literally 12:58 owner smites and then Peanut smites at 58 HP. And then that happened again later on in the series at some of these Drakes. Like it just kept happening where they would both press smite on a dragon that was like 1260 HP, and then Peanut would win it every time.
Yeah,
So it was really very, very lucky that Peanut won so many of these like very crucial objective 50-50s, which made the game exciting, but definitely like if one of those goes T1's way, they probably win the whole series.
Game one, Viper did an insane amount of poke on his Ezreal and just constantly harassed, constantly put, T1 into this position where they had prio, but then Viper hit like 17 Qs, it felt like. I mean, more realistically, like 5 or 6. And then, okay, they're chipped down. Now this is playable for Hanwha. Viper has had an insane week. He had great games yesterday as well.
Oh, his
And
Kaisig, it was amazing.
it's we've talked about Viper on this show a lot being the, arguably the best AD carry, multiple different seasons where he was robbed by X team that's in first place is AD carry. But this is one of those seasons, especially with Pays kind of falling off a little bit this week, where, in weeks 1 and 2, you could definitely make the argument that Pays was the best AD carry.
I mean, Viper was MVP of the week for sure. I mean, he was crazy this week.
This week was just like he transcended the rest of the AD carry pool. He was like, I'm on a tier that you guys can't even see. He had an incredible week. It's crazy that T1 gave him Ezreal, the strongest AD carry on paper in this meta, 3 games in a row. But there's a lot to ban. But he popped the fuck off. Like Viper was him. He was the guy. He was actually crazy. And to me, you can't even talk about this series without talking about the fact that Viper just didn't give a fuck about what the comp was, what the game state was. He played like if he didn't win the game, he was going to be executed after that. It was like his last game. He played that game like every single game, especially game 1, like it was his last game. And I don't know what else to say. If you guys didn't watch the series, go back and watch it, especially game 1. He played out of his mind. It's crazy. They gave
Peanut also had a couple very good games on Poppy, and like honestly, Wolf, like Peanut and Poppy is probably my favorite player / champion combination right now, and has been for several years. And so I love it. I will watch any Peanut plays Poppy game. And he was crazy. He was crazy in this game in terms of his ganks, keeping Zeus down in the top side, the dives, the W usage, hitting owner with his ult at very crucial moments. Like he absolutely, I mean, he got Dorn an insane lead on that Rumble in the top side, and he really dictated the pace of this game. He kept Faker from rocket jumping. Like he was brilliant. His pathing was amazing. He was brilliant on this Poppy pick. So it just seems like also part of the Peanut versus owner rivalry is Peanut just going Super Saiyan whenever he has to face T1. Like he is owner's daddy in a lot of ways.
I mean, we went back to basically the 2021 Gen.G Peanut era, or sorry, 2022, I believe it was, where Peanut was both owner and Peanut were the best Poppy players in the LCK, and we were talking about how Peanut was smarter than owner and how he played it. Like this was the Peanut's brain versus owner hands argument we had a lot back then.
Sure.
And that was kind of the beginning of Gen.G winning everything from then on against T1. But the Poppy pick that was so popular and really kind of pioneered by both Peanut and Owner back then, has like resurfaced suddenly. And we've been seeing, I don't want to say just this week, but we've kind of seen this trend in the LCK where teams are like, I'm just gonna play what I'm really fucking good at, and I'm gonna roll with it. And it felt like to me Gen.G's version of that, where they're like, no, Peanut's gonna play Poppy, or sorry, Hanwha's version of that, where Peanut's gonna play Poppy, formerly Gen.G, where he did do that a lot back then, but that was extremely meta. Now on Hanwha, they're just like, no, we'll put Peanut on this. He's really good at that, and it's incredibly good for objective control. And I've talked about this a lot on the LCK. I've talked about it a little bit last week. When it's 80 carry mids and you don't have an engage mid laner, the lack of engage in these team comps, you can really often feel it, especially when it's a support that doesn't have hard engage. The Poppy gives you the ability to just say, nope, I'm knocking 2, sometimes 3 people away from an objective. We get the control from that. Smite timings are so good for Peanut, how clean he is in this, and how lucky he was, as you mentioned, allowing them to actually get these objectives away. They had the Rumble, they played through it, it was incredibly strong. Hanwha just looked like the better team in this series, and even though they made some mistakes and there was some bad team fights for them, and they got out-rotated by T1 a few times, the fighting back, making it super close, was really fun and interesting to watch. I really enjoyed the series. To me, it was definitely the best series of the LCK so far this season.
Yeah, it was
And
really fun to watch. Like there were a lot of throws, admittedly. There were a lot of
sure,
like dumb 50-50s, but it was very entertaining. It was very entertaining.
when I see Viper play the way he played, when I see Peanut play the way he played, where Peanut can just
So
wheel
surely
out.
Viper will be first team ADC of summer if he continues playing like this, right, Wolf?
Well, I mean, if he
Surely.
continues playing like this, he's got my vote. It's week 4, so a lot can change between now and the end of the season. But at the moment, yeah, I'm feeling pretty strongly about it.
All right,
But
it's hot take time then because T1 just won EWC. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, T1's back." They come back. Obviously, they're tired, but they struggle against Brion. They should beat Hanwha. They don't clutch it up. Hanwha ends up with the win. Is Hanwha the better team than T1? Is this a Hanwha Gen.G finals?
I'm not ready to say that. Doran played Quinn. It wasn't great. Um, Also, in game 1, they Viper brought it back. Like, I don't think that, like, Peanut had a great early game, but then T1 got control because Hanwha made some mistakes, Doran into it a little bit, and then, you know, Viper had to, like, I feel like Hanwha is too rough around the edges right now compared to T1's
So
usual robust snowballing. I'm gonna
let me
say,
criticize
oh, I
Hanwha because when I was doing my VOD reviews, a lot of these games were extremely disrespectful of the fact that T1 had TP advantage, either because they weren't running it on Rumble. Like they were fighting a dragon where Rumble was in base and obviously has Ignite and no TP. And it's like, no, your Rumble is your entire gold lead and he's in base. Please, for the love of God, do not fight this Drake. Why is he the one? Like, why are we taking these engagements when you know they have TP and you don't have it, and so you're opting into 4v5s? Why are we doing that?
I think T1 is the better team still, Monty, to answer your question, yeah. Like, there were some big mistakes from Doran. There was some bad reads. Zeko was gonna Zeko a little bit. I
I mean,
do
it's just
think,
it's just the macro. It's like
yeah.
and even when they did have TP on the top laner, these issues still persisted. It was still like, oh, they have a TP advantage. You cannot make this play. They will double TP on you, and you will die. You can't do that. So it was really just like the map awareness and the where they could make plays for Hanwha that was disappointing to me in terms of their macro.
I think Hanwha was super tunneled on their early game, and their early games were pretty good. I mean, the Quinn game, Doran, like, they wanted to play for the early game there. That absolutely did not work out, because they got Caitlyn, right? So they had that Ezreal in the bottom lane, and that often is pretty sustainable and is pretty self-sustainable, I should say, where you don't need a lot of resources to get ahead on that matchup. That was not the case historically for League of Legends, but on this patch where Ezreal is just super overtuned, like, you can just kind of leave that on an island, play through the Quinn. That didn't work out. Doran didn't get any advantage whatsoever. Then he was just like a empty Quinn flying around the map doing nothing, because he doesn't have TP, and because the Quinn doesn't take TP into Renekton. You only play Quinn into Renekton. You guys know how this works. He did not get it done. That was a really disappointing performance from him. And
I
Zayas
mean, the
played
only
well.
person who's I know Doran was 4-0 on Quinn coming into this, but the only person who's allowed to do this is Keen.
I mean, Doran had some fantastic Quinn games, so I'll push back on that a little bit and say that like I think he has the license to play Quinn, like he's qualified. But in this,
He's got a
series,
flying license. He's got his pilot's license.
in this game, he didn't do it right. So you know, you have the Caitlyn pushing the Ezreal, you have the Quinn that's not working out, and it's Zek on his ear. And if you've been watching this show, you know how we feel about that. Like it got a little bit better, but you know, it's still not the same tier as BDD, Faker, Chovy. Um, I think that Hanwha made a lot of mistakes this series, but I thought their draft reads were overall pretty fine. The Quinn was a big risk; it didn't pay off, but they were up in the series, so you can fuck around with that a little bit. But Viper playing the way he did, Peanut being so clutch, like those are the moments. And T1 again, they messed up game 3. I love this series for it was overall way higher level play than most of the games this week, with the exception of the Gen.G games where they absolutely bopped tough opponents. And yes, there were throws, yes, there were mistakes, but it was exciting for it. Like it was very clearly a match that mattered a lot to both these teams because these are two teams fighting for potentially second place. Dplus was holding that for a while, but after watching them play this week, then watching these two teams, I don't think Dplus holds that for the rest of the season. I don't think they're necessarily our second best team. I'm going to go as far as to say like I'm pretty confident they're not our second best team now. But watching these two teams battle it out and how important it was, etc., was super hype. And I'm lucky I was able to cast it. You know, you never know if you're going to get the good series or not. The Hanwha T1 series that either is just a slap. It's not interesting. Like one team slaps the other one because T1's still jet lagged, whatever, or the one that goes back and forth. That's really interesting to see. You know how it all shakes down, especially in game 3 when Faker chokes and all that stuff happens. That's what makes a good series. I think a lot of people would be like, no, if Faker chokes, then it's not a good series because he didn't play his best. But no, that's the intensity of it. You know, if you can make Faker get to this position where he makes a mistake because there's so much pressure on him, like that's what a hype esports series is to me. Is it the highest level we could have seen between these teams? Absolutely not. But that's not always going to happen because there are 10 humans on the Rift and humans make mistakes. So
it was still a very fun series. I
it
will
was
say I was
hype.
very entertained watching it.
Yeah, it was good.
And there were enough, like, there are enough moments, like, I can be critical of these moments, but there were also some really, really high-level plays, like I said, in terms of jungle pathing from Peanut, in terms of mechanics from Viper, ability to recognize TP plays and create a comeback from T1, because I can criticize the fact that, basically Hanwha was not recognizing when they did or did not have kind of priority on the map and TP advantages, but also T1 was able to use those TP advantages to create leads. So I do think T1 should have won this series, though.
They should have. I mean, they should have won game 1. I mean, Hanwha should have won, but then T1 should have won, but then they didn't. Hanwha won. So it's it's a little.
They did a bad job of snowballing the giant lead they had with Rumble.
T1 had
Hanwha should have been able to snowball that for sure.
T1 were given opportunities to win for sure, and they did not.
Yep.
Hanwha then went on to play against BNK and last night, and Peanut played Morgana and absolutely destroyed Raptor. But I mean, obviously he's the better jungler. He's way more experienced than Raptor. Peanuts just didn't black shield anyone, even though it was sick high value for black shield in that comp. He was like, Delight's like, he didn't even black shield me, bro. Peanut's like, no, watch the bot. I black shielded you when you were at 10 health and then you died. But I did actually press on you. But his early pathing was why they won the game. Like it's so funny to watch Peanut literally can't press E on people at the right time, but it doesn't matter because he knows the other aspects of Morgana's advantages so well that he still wins anyways. That's the Peanut angle.
God. He's just the pathing god.
He's just smart. He can't use his hands very well all the time, but he can use his smite finger and he can use his brain. Like those two things, he's got it down.
Sometimes he also sometimes wanders into the enemy jungle and dies for no reason. But a lot of the time he does the smart thing. That's just part of who Peanut is.
It was a great week for Peanut though, and I think when you see that Gen.G Peanut energy, that's when from back then when he was the best jungler, that's when maybe this could be the Hanwha run. I'm always like, maybe this time it isn't T1 Gen.G, and it's gonna be T1 Gen.G. But Peanut's giving you a little hope. He's like, maybe in the best of 5. Nah, I don't know. But it looked very cool. It looked very clean. Is T1 like the 4th, 5th best team in the no, don't overreact. I think they're probably still top 2. There was a lot of hopium for the Damwon fans, like, oh, is Dplus number 2? Now it's like, is Hanwha number 2? I mean, in the
No.
standings, yes, they beat T1, but I think ultimately T1 is the better team. We're very tired this week.
I think T1 wins that best of 5.
I think so. Unless they choke, which they did in game 3. So maybe they choke in game 5 and they don't win it. But I do think T1 is obviously still very, very strong. And they won EWC. And I think the rumors of Gen.G's demise were vastly exaggerated, whatever the quote, the meme is. Gen.G came back, absolutely crushed this week against 2 strong opponents. T1 came back. They won the tournament. They didn't look as strong as I think they theoretically could be, but they're still a good team. And I think, going forward, it's the end of the first round robin. I think in the second round robin, they bounce back in a big way, and they will probably move up to at least top 3, but probably top 2. We'll see. That's my expectation.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what Gen.G did well this week. But first off, we have a second sponsor this week, guys. That's right. Factor is back. Thank you very much to Factor. If you guys have been looking to, maybe eat a little healthier later in this year, now's a great time to do it with Factor meals, because you can get 35 different meals that they shift and rotate every week, and more than 60 add-ons to choose from. When I was back in the States for MSI, I really enjoyed like the pork chop that they had with green beans and mashed potatoes. It's great, healthy, delivered straight to you, not frozen. They have a variety of different options in terms of your diet, like Protein Plus, Keto, Calorie Smart. So if you're on a little bit of a diet, this is a great opportunity. They also sent along a bunch of protein shakes. So those were great to have just in the fridge, so you can get snacks and stuff to add on as well. All comes in one box delivered to you with cold packs in it, so it stays nice and fresh. You just throw them in the fridge, microwave them for 2 minutes. Cheaper than you're going to have with takeout. It's, probably better for you, because most of us don't, make the best decisions in terms of health with takeout or delivery food a lot of the time. Maybe you're one of the rare ones, but I will tell you, I'm not Wolf.
We're all human, okay?
if I'm gonna order food, I'm generally not gonna pick the healthy option. So you can avoid those situations simply by having this easy made food, chef crafted meals in your fridge. So you can head to factormeals.com/MonteWolf50 and use code MonteWolf50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code MonteWolf50 at factormeals.com/MonteWolf50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. And I'll be back in the States a couple times later this year, so I think I will enjoy it once again once I'm there. All right, so Gen.G. Let's talk about the bounce back before we wrap up the show, because they did have, as you noted earlier, potentially a very tough week against Kwangdong and Dplus. And we wondered if, oh no, obviously, like, what was so punishing about the Esports World Cup is that if you didn't get the meta read right in the best of 3, you were just done, right? So, but there's no guarantee that even seeing the rest of the tournament play out, that you are going to have the right meta read. But lo and behold, Wolf, they come in this week. They ban Tristana. They first pick Corki. They force Bulldog onto Hui. They play, newly buffed GP into Renekton, and they put Kenyon back on Sejuani, which was rising in priority throughout the tournament EWC as we saw it go along. And Kenyon played for like most of spring. He was just a Canyon and Maokai 2 trick. So, it's not the most exciting way to watch a player like Canyon, but it's a way that Gen.G found to play very well as a team and to win games of League of Legends.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way that Gen.G controlled the early game against Kwangdong, especially, that really stood out to me. Like how they just removed Dudu from the game. They were like, he's not in the game. He doesn't exist. He's not real. And just watching. Every top laner knows, or everyone who's even played top lane a little bit, even if you're not like a top player, you see Dudu like, I'm gonna back. Wait, I can't back. I can't get the wave. I can't defend my turret. I can't stop the dive. I'm fucked. Like, he's just like, I'm fucked. I can't do anything. And his jungler can't help him. Like, you watch that and you're like, damn, Gen.G knows how to remove a player from the game. Like, they know how to turn League of Legends into a 5v4, and they did that. Those types of decisions, the pathing, from Canyon. The early control, pretty insane. The Nidalee pick, against Dplus, that one fell a little bit flat. I felt like it was one of the rare times where, we saw a team challenge Gen.G and Pays was punished on the Senna. And it was when you play Nidalee Senna, the problem is that your Senna is relatively exposed in that, she can be dove. And yes, they had an Ornn, but Ornn is not like Nautilus, great at anti-dive. Like the Leona is another, support pick that, regardless of your AD carry, is pretty good at anti-dive because you have the stun, you have the Zenith Blade, you have your ultimate, potentially, but that's not the big part of it. You have two tools to be like, if you dive my AD carry, I will hold you under a turret, and you will get hit by the turret a lot. Ornn is a little bit tougher to pull that off on. But in Italy, you also have your jungler, right, who sometimes will shadow and prevent dives. A lot of junglers have CC, like, even Viego has it, Sejuani has it, Xin Zhao can get a knockup, does a lot of damage. Italy is like, I'm throwing spears at him, I don't know, he's fucked, like, I can't help, like, Kenya's like, he's like, I'm there, he's at the right place, he's like, I'm here, they're coming for Pays, I'm there because, like, I'm a good jungler. I'm not gonna let my AD carry. I know the angle. I know Cuz is coming, or not Cuz in this case. Lucid. I know Lucid is coming, and then he's like, but all I can do is throw one spear and good luck. I felt like Dplus punished the Nidalee
he
pick
did farm very well. I mean, by the end of the game, he was level 17 to Lucid's 13, and both he and Chovy had Flame Horizon their opponents. Now, part of this is like what we discussed, aiming, taking all of the farm, and Showmaker just being a bum on Seraph's Embrace, doing no damage on this Talia. But also, like, credit to Keen, who like just won the Renekton matchup in the top side as Cassante. And then, they snowballed very effectively out of that. So yeah, the early game was rough. The Senna was rough, but by the end of the game, like, the scaling was pretty crazy on the side of Gen.G. And it was just that they had so much more farm and so many more levels than their opponents.
Yeah, I mean, Pays had a rough one, but again, it was well played by Dplus to punish him. Aiming had some great all-ins into Pays as well when he found him and
Yep.
was able to, like, interact with him 1v1. But let's all just, like, let's not forget the GOAT of modern mid League of Legends, who popped the fuck off and then found that insane Emperor's Divide angle. Who was super patient, had the flash play on the top side. Like, if Chovy doesn't make that play, then maybe it's not a win for Gen.G. That was like the closest it felt like in the season to a loss for Gen.G, and Chovy was like, nah, we don't lose these. Pops the fuck off, gets that Emperor's Divide. So, I mean, that was the big turning point in that second game, on his Azir, where he was like, nah, like, Pays is having a roughie, he's not scaled, they're kind of snowballing on us a little bit, but we got the tools, and they got it done in the end. Like, that was just a clutch play from Chovy. Showmaker looked a bit rough in that game, as you mentioned, was kind of an invisible Talia. But when Gen.G's macro is as good as it is, and they're constantly threatening you everywhere, and you can't Weaver's Wall in, you can't set up the fights the way you want to, then it's going to be a bit of a struggle. I do want to reiterate, though, I don't think Nidalee with the Senna lane is going to be it. When they have like so many tools to dive the Senna, and you're not playing Senna Nautilus, it's probably best to not play the Nidalee in this situation. Obviously, they couldn't have known exactly how the draft was going to turn out at the point where they picked the Nidalee in the draft, but you could see the weakness there. I felt like Dplus had a really good read on how to try to punish that. Aiming was very confident there. But in the Ivern game, like, Aiming spent that entire team fight on Dragon, like, out of the fight, and then, like, dashed in when it was already over to die, even though he was the one who had all the money. He popped off against Pays in terms of killing him 1v1 and helping to snowball that lane again. So guess what? They played through him. He got an advantage. Couldn't get it done in the team fights. I mean, Chovy clutched it right on the Emperor's Divide play near Baron. But at the end of the day, like, Dplus again indexed into aiming. It didn't work out against a strong team like Gen.G. I mean, the strongest team. Maybe that's not necessarily the plan. I don't want to. I feel like I don't want to talk real bad about Dplus because it was actually overall well played by them. They had some good reads. They had the good strategy. The dives were good. They got aiming ahead very well. Like, they did a good job, as they always do, because that's their MO, of putting aiming in a position to pop off and carry.
I mean, but the cost was the Renekton is completely fucking useless. Keen is dominating top, and sure we're diving bot side, but Canyon is farming the rest of the map and getting massive advantages.
I think against a team that's not actually like infallible like Gen.G, it probably works out. But Gen.G is just too good to actually use this pretty predictable strategy and hope that it works out. Especially when aiming just isn't performing in team fights. If he's able to get if you're winning super hard and you have control over the map and aiming can do whatever he wants, like he's gonna perform there. But when he has to take a risk, when he has to slide into a team fight at the exact right moment, and it's tough, and there's Ivern bushes, and you actually have to use good judgment there. Like he doesn't always get those done. Sometimes he gets it done. I mean, think about KT aiming. He got that done a lot of the time. But Gen.G just super good, and Chovy's clutch factor was there. It's just a reminder that Gen.G very rarely is behind in a game. Feels like, I mean, there's been a lot of games obviously, and they're still undefeated, but it feels like this is the first time where it looked like, oh, Gen.G might lose a game, and Chovy's like, nah, no. Like it was that kind of moment where you're like, oh, is Gen.G behind? Is it over? Is the streak over? And Chovy says no, because this team is still going to be clutch in those rare moments where they're behind. And then EWC, everyone was like, oh, well, I guess they're overrated. But no, not actually. They just had bad meta read, they had bad draft read. I mean, it was horrible. We've already talked about it. I'm not going to go into it anymore. But I do think Gen.G will get the undefeated round robin. They might set a record this season. Like it is possible to plus 36, 18-0. I'm not going to predict it because that's actually insane.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But it might happen. Like I never thought we'd be.
They're basically halfway. They're basically halfway there. Because we don't anticipate that Gen.G is going to drop a map to Nongshim in the first week. But Gen.G also has back-to-back weeks playing against Dplus, and they did almost lose some of those maps. So, Gen.G versus Dplus happens in their second match next week, so we get the rematch right away next Saturday. I mean, next Saturday is just an ultra banger. It's T1 versus Hanwha Life rematch and Gen.G versus Dplus rematch. It's just going to be crazy how good that day is. So as we look forward, Kwangdong versus Hanwha is also next week, which I think sounds better on paper than it is. I'm pretty out on Kwangdong right now, so I think they are frauds and that their record is not really reflective of how good they are at this point in time. Like as far as the power rankings of LCK go, I think Hanwha's a much better team than them right now. I think T1 is technically below them in the standings. T1 is a much better team than them right now. I'll go ahead and say it, Wolf. KT might be a better team than them right now. And I hate this KT roster, and I love Kwangdong. So that's how low my opinion of Kwangdong has fallen, because I think they're just so Trist Corky dependent.
I think you're definitely right on that. I also think that Kwangdong is not being as proactive as they were in the first few weeks. I don't know what it is about this team where at the beginning of the season they have some really cool draft reads. They're super proactive. They play incredibly well around Cuz, and then you look at it and you go, yeah, well, Bulldog's not perfect, but yeah, he followed up really well in this draft, and he had a weak lane phase, but like they were really aggressive early. They got one of their lanes ahead. They team fought. They were clutch. They got it done. And then it's like every second round robin where you're like, are these players burnt out? Like, why is Ondil inting? Like, what's happening? It happens every time. And then you go, is CVMAX pushing them too hard? Because this team historically, famously, doesn't take breaks. He's constantly scrimming during the off season. It's EWC break. Some teams are taking a break. Like Dplus, came out in their comms. Like, if you beat Kwangdong, we're going to give you some extra time off, stuff like that. Kwangdong doesn't do that. They are always working. They're always grinding. And I feel like sometimes they just straight up lose focus because it almost feels like to them like every game is just another scrim because they're just playing so much nonstop, constantly practicing, and CVMAX makes them play solo queue until, late hours of the night. And so I think sometimes that can be a boon, especially leading into a season where other teams took a ton of break, and then you show up at the beginning, like first round robin. Kwangdong is so ready because they've been playing so much, but then by the time the other teams catch up, it's like, well, you need to give them a rest because they've been playing so much, so constantly, they're kind of burnt. The other teams are catching up, and then we see the fall off like every single time. That's my theory, anyways, about what's happening. And CVMAX has made it very clear that he doesn't really like to take breaks, and he thinks like that's kind of, that's like a lazy way of approaching how you should improve as a League of Legends squad. It worked out on Griffin. I don't know if it's necessarily going to work out on this team, but I
Yeah,
do
better
think
players on Griffin.
I do think Hanwha will, and that is absolutely true, as we know. At the time, a lot of those players were relatively new and undiscovered, so like they were new talents. So
I mean, but they were
know.
still at the top of the league.
Sure.
There's the difference, right?
But I mean, when they came into the LCK, they were the top of challengers, right? But like, nobody could have known for sure that this roster was going to do this. But he put it together. Anyway, that was a fantastic roster. He coached that roster really well. We're not going to talk about like Pantheon to the bottom lane.
But I do think like to at the point, like Kwangdong's players may not have the skill ceiling that that mix of Griffin players did have, but they have gotten iteratively better. I mean, they are in 4th place in the league right now, so we can only criticize them so much because their results have meant that they kind of climbing higher and higher in the standings, split after split.
I think they're going to playoffs for sure. Like, there's no doubt in
Yes.
my mind. And
Yeah, they're definitely going to playoffs.
I don't think they're going to collapse the same way that they did last season, where it was
No.
a really rough.
The double Breon loss.
Yeah. I don't think that's happening, but I also could tell you guys right now, it's a Hanwha 2-0 against them probably. I think T1 will beat Hanwha the second time. I think Gen.G will crush Dplus the second time. But still, those 3 matches are kind of bangers on paper, and I'm looking forward to seeing, if we're wrong about that, because we've seen so many upsets already, so it is possible.
Right. And they're not going to, I don't think they're going to go on the same, because remember, they were looking really good up until this point last split, and this is where the losing streak started, and they barely made playoffs at 7-11, and they kind of had to pull the rabbit out of their hat at the last second. And the thing about Kwangdong now is, like, I just don't think you're going to see that same losing record. They only need to win 2 games to have the same result that they did last split, right? So, like, it just feels as though they are a significant step above the bottom 4 teams in this league, which I suppose did feel that way last split too. But I think it's unlikely that situation repeats itself. They're probably at least a 500 team.
Brief KT chat. They beat 2 bad teams this week.
Yeah,
Cool.
whatever.
I don't know what to think about KT right now.
I mean, we're not going to get any information because next week they play DRX and Fox again. So it's another telecom war in 2 weeks, though. I mean, basically their next 4 games are DRX, Fox, T1, and Nongshim. So, like, they should win 3 of those, right? At the end of the day, this team should be like 7-5 in 2 weeks when we check in on them. That is how it should go. They shouldn't beat T1, but we talked about KT's strength of schedule affecting their winless streak. And this is the other side of that, which is when now they just get a bunch of super easy matches against bad teams. And they did beat T1 last time. It was a miracle, but they did do that.
Yeah, I think that KT is going to be... I think we're all going to be putting KT under the microscope and being like, okay, they look like they're on this 6th streak. They look really good, but like, let's remember the strength of schedule was weak, and then they're going to get really tested at the end of the season where the strength of schedule ramps up. Then we're going to know what their relative power level is going to playoffs, because we're like, okay, well, they actually played against the strong teams here at the end, and then we'll see what happens with them. They've got good vibes, good energy, and looking at their comms and the memes and stuff this week. But at the end of the day, it was an easy week for them, or it should have been, and it was. So let's see what happens when it gets tougher, because I'm not ready to trust. I'm not ready to believe. I think they will likely make playoffs just based on the opposition at this point, and DRX's big fall off over the last 2 weeks. So I think that's almost guaranteed. If you're a KT fan, at least you probably got that one. But it's early, but I do not imagine they will be winning playoff games when they get there. But we'll see. As KT has surprised us before, but I know a lot of people are like, they didn't mention X team on the Monte Wolf Show. But I thought we should mention KT briefly and do a little check-in. But the other teams we didn't mention, there's no, it doesn't warrant it. Sorry. No, I will not talk about the problems with BNK for the 17th time that haven't changed. And the
DRX
issues.
almost won game 2 versus Kwangdong until they threw. They got Hextech and then threw.
Oh, don't remind me about that game. I don't want it. We don't need to talk about it. It's okay. We can just move on.
Well,
that was it. The one thing I will say is that was the game where I was like, "Uh-oh, it's happening. Is Kwangdong on form? Are they losing their form? I think they're losing their form, because you lose to Gen.G. There's no shame in it. Gen.G. absolutely blasted you. That's okay. You almost lose a game to DRX, and the way that they won game 1 as well with just a big Aatrox that flanked, which was extremely risky.
That was a huge play by Dudu, though.
Yeah, no, it was good, but like also it could have completely backfired if you didn't play it well, and if they were a little bit slower on the follow up, then actually they lose that game as well, potentially off of this. They had full dragon control and Cuz played great early game, but you know what I mean. It was not the same sort of dominance we were seeing and the same sort of productivity we were seeing in the first 3 weeks. So they fell off this week. They lost to Gen.G. Yes, they 2-0 DRX, but big test against Hanwha next week, and then they should absolutely slap Bro down 2-0, like whatever. But we'll keep our eyes on them. I am a little bit worried if there's some burnout going on, or the traditional Kwangdong round 2 fall off, if that happens, or if, maybe they can surprise us.
Very good. All right, guys, that'll do it for this week on the Monte and Wolf Show. We'll be back to check in with T1, GenG, and all your favorite LCK rosters next week, same time. See you then.